According to the U.S. Attorney General William Barr, the nearly 2-year investigation by Special Counsel Robert Mueller concluded that there was no criminal conspiracy between the Trump campaign and the Russian government during the run-up to the 2016 election. However, this was despite multiple efforts from Russia-affiliated individuals to assist the Trump campaign. Indeed, U.S. intelligence agencies were united in their assertion that Russians with links to Russian intelligence work to undermine the U.S. elections. While some say that Washington must now combat ongoing Russian efforts to undermine American democracy, less publicized is that the U.S. Justice Department has reportedly set their sights on China and may be preparing indictments against hackers accused of links to the Chinese government. So what may come next in terms of U.S. accusations against Russia? What does the conclusion of the Mueller investigation mean for China? Joining me in the studio is Professor Rick Dunham, former White House correspondent and current director of the Global Business Program at Tsinghua University. From Moscow, Dmitry Babich, political analyst from Sputnik International, and from Philadelphia, Brandon Blackburn-Dwyer, an American analyst who long lived in China. Gentlemen, welcome to The Point. So we do not know the content of the report. It hasn't been released, and yet we have these 4-page summary by Mr. Barr, which there is a direct quote, says, as the report states, the investigation did not establish that members of the Trump campaign conspired or coordinated with the Russian government in its election interference activities. So shouldn't that be taken as a conclusion that there is no criminal conspiracy between the Trump administration and the Russians? Brandon?
Well, we can take that as a conclusion on the one very central aspect to the Mueller investigation, that there was no direct evidence that the president or his inner circle directed or actively coordinated with Russian actors or foreign actors to affect the election. What we can also, see, is that we still have 34 people that came out of the Mueller investigation that have been indicted or charged, including 12 Russian intelligence officials, 13 Russian nationals, and 3 companies with ties to Russia. So the idea is that the president and his inner circle is exonerated from actively colluding or coordinating with this group, but if we're looking for evidence of interference in the election, sort of full stop, there was plenty of that, and there has been actual legal proceedings to back that up.
Okay, we'll talk about the legal proceedings in just a moment, because Chinese nationals have also been subject of such legal proceedings, and it's always a bit more complicated than what it appears. Dmitry, how does the Russian government react to this part of the report, and also the other part of the report which says investigation is still ongoing about Russia's interference into the U.S. election campaign, despite the Trump campaign having no established conspiracy with the Russians?
Well, the Russian view of it coincides with a headline in the magazine called The American Conservative, published in the United States. And that headline is, "It was all a lie." Isn't that terrible that for 2 years, CNN, MSNBC, the largest American news outlets, were feeding their audience lies? Because actually, during the last 2 years, if you doubted this so-called collusion between Trump's campaign and Russia, it was you would be called a flat earther. You were like denying some axiom that the mainstream media has established beyond any doubt. And I think this is very, very dangerous for Russia, for China, and for all the other countries, that actually it was possible for 2 years to maintain this semblance of certainty about this so-called Russian interference.
All right.
Well, I heard the previous
let me go back to you,
these
Babich.
words about 12 Russian intelligence officials.
Let me go back to you, Dmitry. Let me go to Professor Dunham here, because he's shaking his head like in Chinese we say a drum for the kids. What do you not agree with?
Well, he was speaking longer than me, so I think I should have finished.
He hasn't spoken yet. Dmitry, he hasn't spoken yet. I will give enough time.
So now that we've heard the Kremlin disinformation, let's talk about the reality. There was Russian involvement trying to disrupt the last election, trying to sow dissent in the U.S. The summary by the Attorney General stated it clearly. There also were Russian attempts to damage the campaign of Hillary Clinton. through the leaks of information, through the hacking of the DNC. There's no doubt about that. Where Dmitry has a point.
How do you know there's no doubt about that?
Well, there's no doubt because that's one where Democrats, Republicans, and the Trump Justice Department all agree. There's evidence. There were indictments.
Okay.
But where Dmitry has a point is the overkill by some of the television news in the United States. I think that they jumped to a lot of conclusions that the evidence didn't support, and that particularly was that Donald Trump conspired with Russian military intelligence. That was something that you heard a lot on MSNBC, on CNN by commentators, and the Attorney General's summary of the report said that there was not enough evidence to indict on that.
Okay, Dmitry, let me give you your opportunity to react to that. I understand you say it is all a big lie, but look, there are 13 Russian nationals who were indicted, 12 Russian officials, am I right,
yes,
who have been indicted as well.
I'll come back to that, yes.
Yeah, so doesn't that say anything about the credibility of the charges?
To indict foreign intelligence officials who did not visit the United States, who operated on social networks, as the American investigators say, this is just laughable. I mean, there are hundreds, thousands, probably tens of thousands of American intelligence officials who monitor the Russian reality, the Russian political reality. You know, some of them we know come to Russia, they participate in conferences, there is a lot of information coming from Russia to the United States. And you know, to indict foreign intelligence officials is just laughable, you know, especially when they didn't visit your country, so they couldn't commit a crime on your territory simply because they were not there.
All right.
You know, was Russia concerned about the American election in 2016? Yes, because Hillary Clinton, the #1 candidate, compared Russia to Nazi Germany, compared President Putin to Adolf Hitler. Well, imagine the biggest military power on the earth, the richest country, comparing your country
Dmitry,
to Nazi Germany,
I have to interrupt
comparing
again
your leader to Adolf Hitler.
Yeah,
of course you would be concerned about this person coming to power.
Sure.
So.
Sure. Brandon, let me give you some time to. Good that you haven't complained yet. I don't want to leave you out. What should people do now? Now that we have this conclusion and Mueller is respected by both parties, shouldn't this page be turned? And should the United States, especially some people in the United States, really focus on how to deal with Russia on a rational manner?
I would agree. First of all, I'd say I'd be pretty surprised if a lot of people in the Republican Party still had any respect for Mueller. They've spent a lot of the last 2 years telling everybody in the world that he was an idiot. And just because he came out with something that they like doesn't mean that they're going to change his mind. But when we're talking about Russia, you do hit on a real point here, that the Mueller investigation has revealed at least incredibly concerning activities by a foreign government, whether they're criminal or not, whether they can ever be actually fully prosecuted or not, whether we should consider them criminal or not, we can debate that. But the reality is that there is ample evidence to show, beyond a reasonable doubt for probable cause, to indict foreign actors for being involved in the election. Now, we've seen the ramifications of that. We've already seen people go after Facebook for allowing this to happen. I'm not really sure how they allowed it, but they did. You know, when you're looking at, you know, whether we are vulnerable to certain types of social attacks that we really hadn't thought of as national security in the past, this is a major turning point in the world where we need to start seeing social media and social interaction in a much more engaged and dynamic way that both non-state actors and state actors
can let me ask you this question,
the course
Brendan,
of the world
let me ask you this
even
question.
if it's not formal intelligence.
Yeah, let me ask you this question, because there are people who are saying, look, CGTN is disseminating its tweets, its content on the website in the United States, and they're saying this is political activities aimed at influencing the American public's opinion on China or to change the U.S. policy. Does that make, that seems to be the same kind of logic that you're holding against Russian activity or some other activity. Where do you draw the line? Rick, you wanted to address
Yeah, I think that the main difference is what CGTN posts is true. There was a lot of Russian disinformation coming out of the troll factory in St. Petersburg. It was the social media lies that were being spread and the planning of rival events, trying to bring Black Lives Matter supporters into conflict with white supremacists. This was all done through St. Petersburg, and that was, as the indictment points out, there is much evidence. So that's the difference. It was disinformation, it was fake news that was coming out of Russia, as opposed to what CGTN posts.
Okay, thank you for the compliment, but fake news is everywhere on the internet.
Right.
Are you going to go after and indict everybody who's seen to be spreading fake news?
No. Spreading fake news itself, I mean, there's free speech. You're allowed to lie. But that was not what the indictment charges. And I mean, there is a good debate that you can have about foreign influence in other countries. And in my view, you can say whatever you want, and agencies of a state can say whatever they want in another country. That's not a crime.
Okay, Dmitry, let me go to you now. Your turn. How does Russia jump out of this big black hole that has been stalling relations between China and between Russia and the United States? Is there any possibility, now that the Trump administration has been cleared of conspiracy with the Russian government, is there any hope in sight?
Well, the Russian elite actually doesn't want a conflict with the United States. The Russian Prime Minister Medvedev said that this was all a misunderstanding, that Russia became a kind of hostage to the internal political fight in the United States. I don't agree with that. I think the situation is much more troublesome. The fact that basically our opponents in the United States are using 18th century laws. 18th century laws were used against Michael Flynn, who just talked to the Russian ambassador, as a lot of national security advisors did before him. And they used 18th century legislation against him in the 21st century. We live in a different world now. I can send emails to my friends in the United States. I can post something on Facebook and thousands of people in the United States will be able to see it. This is 21st century. Of course, we are influencing public opinion in the United States by posting something on Facebook, just like Americans influence our public opinion posting something on Facebook which is ubiquitous in Russia. So we live in a different world, and the fact that the Democrats have used this kind of legislation, this kind of thinking, it's a symptom of a big malaise in the American society. We actually have a very belligerent, very intolerant ideology dominating the United States. And this is the problem. That ideology can threaten not only Russia, but also China and other countries. The fact that this ideology is paranoid about foreign influences is just a symptom.
Let me give 10 seconds, please. You made your point. Brandon, what is your point? Please. 10 seconds, please.
All I'm going to say is that we have evidence of interaction. It is deemed illegal in the United States, and we're going to have a long-running discussion about what's actually illegal and what's public opinion.
What about China? Should China brace for anything bad coming? Rick?
I do think that now that the Trump Justice Department is free of the worries about the Mueller report, I do think you're going to see indictments coming. I mean, I'm not predicting something that I don't know, but I think that they will feel free to pursue it, yes.
All right. Thank you so much, Rick Dunham, Dmitry Babich, and Brandon Blackburn-Dwyer. Dmitry, I'm so sorry I had to interrupt you again and again, but I believe gave you more time than the other guests. Thank you so much for watching this edition of The Point with me, Liu Xin.